Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. Tonight we continue our study in the book of Genesis, chapters 28 through 36. That's a lot of material to cover. Let's get started. I want to begin with a story from my high school days. I worked at a stockyards in Oklahoma City. It's a place where ranchers brought in livestock to be auctioned and sold. My job was to feed the cattle every morning at 6 o'clock with big burlap bags of sweet feed and bales of hay. It was hard physical work. But around 10 o'clock, the auction started, and I got to ride a little three-wheeled scooter and drive down these long alleyways and open up one of the pens for the cattle to enter, and then I would shut the gate behind them. Now, these folks here are on horses. I was on a little motorbike. But one morning, a bull got loose, and it was coming right towards me. I got off my little bike, and I climbed up on the fence, but that's where I stayed. Now, I had red hair, and I was wearing a red shirt. I was an easy target, and he just ran on by inches from me. And later I was told how lucky I was that that bull didn't scrape me off the fence. And I would use a different word than lucky. I was protected or blessed in spite of myself. So God blessed me that day in spite of my foolishness. Well, in Genesis, God's people are blessed, often in spite of their mistakes and failures. So to pick up in Genesis 27, Isaac is going to send Jacob, his son, to Padan Aram. Rebecca has looked around in grief at the Canaanite women there, and she says, I am weary of my life because of the daughters of Heth. If Jacob takes a wife from the daughters of Heth like these, from the daughters of the land, what good will my life be to me? In other words, if Jacob marries badly, my life will have been in vain. And so she hints to her husband of a solution. Let's send Jacob away. And as Cass notes, this conversation concerns the most important purpose of their marriage, the well-being, the nurture of their children and their children's children in relation to the covenant with God, to his true and right ways. And so Isaac says to Jacob, thou shalt not take a wife of the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, the father of thy mother, and take thee a wife from thence of the daughters of Laban, the brother of thy mother. Isaac wants his son to have a wife like he has. His last words in the Bible are a blessing to his son. May God Almighty bless thee and make thee fruitful and multiply thee. May he give thee the blessing of Abraham that was consonant with the covenant. Meanwhile, Esau sees that the daughters of Canaan have displeased his father, and yet he takes a daughter of Ishmael to be his wife, which only makes things worse. Well, Jacob leaves Beersheba. He travels north toward Haran. He's alone in the desert. He reaches a place where Abraham had built an altar, and there he lies down to sleep. He has a dream in which he sees a ladder or ramp reaching to heaven with angels ascending and descending on it. And the Lord is at the top of the ladder. And here God renews the covenant with its promises. Jacob and his descendants will inherit the ground on which he lies. He says, I am with thee. I will protect thee wherever thou goest. I will bring thee back to this land. I will not leave thee until I have done what I have promised thee. So we have a promise of safekeeping and continued presence until the gifts of land, progeny, and a blessed name are delivered. Well, Genesis 28 continues. Jacob is afraid. He's awestruck. And he says, surely the Lord is here. How awesome. And a better translation might be fearful. How dreadful is this place This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. So he erects a pillar. He anoints it with oil, and he names the place Bethel, house of God. But then he tries to make a bargain, I guess. If God prospers his journey in return, Jacob promises that the Lord will be his God. And of all that thou dost give me, I will surely give a tenth in return to thee. So, as Mark Shipp has noted, Jacob tries to heel grab God. Well, Jacob arrives in Haran, chapter 29. There are flocks of sheep lying around a well, waiting for someone to move a large stone that covers the well's mouth. The shepherds there know Laban, and lo and behold, here comes his daughter Rachel coming to water her sheep. Jacob springs into action. He rolls the great stone from the well and waters her flocks. He kisses Rachel and weeps. He introduces himself, and she runs home to tell her father. Her father, Laban, rushes back. He kisses Jacob and says, "Thou art surely my bone and my flesh." Jacob moves in with the family. After 1 month, he offers to work 7 years for his keep and the hand of Laban's daughter, Rachel. But Laban has 2 daughters. The older, Leah, has weak eyes, but it may mean that her eyes are soft and tender. The younger daughter, Rachel, is beautiful of form and beautiful of appearance. She has captured Jacob's heart. A question that Cass asks, do Leah's eyes mean she is weak or that she is soft and tender, nurturing? Could she be a better looker than her better looking sister? And then verse 20 is one of the most beautiful verses in Genesis. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they were in his eyes but a few days because of his love for her. Well, 7 years passes, and the wedding night arrives. Under cover of darkness, Laban switches, brings in his older daughter to Jacob. And in the morning, behold, it's Leah. Jacob has been tricked regarding sisters as he had tricked his dim-sighted father regarding brothers. He says, "What is this you have done to me? Was it not Rachel that I served with you? Why then have you deceived me?" So what he did has come back upon him. And Laban says, "It is not done thus in our place to give the younger before the firstborn." Laban agrees that Jacob can marry Rachel in 1 week, provided he serves his uncle another 7 years. Well, Jacob loves Rachel more than he loves Leah. And God sees that Leah is hated and gives her 4 children: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Leah worships the God of Jacob, and 3 of her sons are named in direct relation to the Lord. Rachel, unfortunately, is barren. Rachel envies Leah and gives Jacob her servant Bilhah as a wife, who then bears 2 sons, Dan and Naphtali. Leah, who has stopped having children, gives Jacob her servant Zilpah as a wife, who then bears Gad and Asher. This is an interesting story. Reuben, Leah's son, comes in from the field with mandrakes. And somehow Rachel is willing to buy these mandrakes from Leah in order to give for Leah to buy time with their husband, who is very distant to Leah. Well, she goes in to Jacob and subsequently has Issachar, Zebulun, and a daughter, Dinah. Well, God then remembers Rachel, and she bears her first son, Joseph. Well, 14 years have gone by, and Jacob wants to leave. But Laban agrees to Jacob's proposal of taking the speckled, spotted sheep and goats. He will take these rare animals, dark lambs from Laban's flocks as his own. But then Laban goes in and removes the stripe, the older striped and spotted goats, as well as the dark lambs, and puts them 3 days away from Jacob. So Jacob's prospects for breeding new livestock are severely reduced. But he is not without resources. Apparently, he knows something of genetic engineering, and he mates his flocks in front of freshly peeled rods of poplar or almond. He strips them, streaks them so that the white bark is showing, and they produce spotted offspring. Jacob places the streaked sticks in the water troughs, and the animals mate and produce spotted offspring. So we have these strong, robust flocks of multicolored sheep and goats who increase for Jacob, while Laban's flocks decrease. Well, chapter 31, Laban's sons are angry, and they accuse Jacob of stealing from their father, which of course isn't true. And Laban has lost regard for his son-in-law. And it's at this point that God speaks to Jacob, and he says, "Return to the land of thy fathers and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee." Jacob persuades his wives to leave, to go. He says, "Your father cheated me. He changed my wages 10 times, but God did not permit him to harm me." So the family sets out, daughters, grandchildren, servants, livestock. They don't tell Laban. But Rachel, for whatever reason, steals her father's household idols, these little figurines called teraphim. We have a picture here of some these clay pillar figurines dating back from the 8th to the 6th century. Laban finds out about it 3 days later. He overtakes Jacob in 7 days, I think, in Gilead, some 350 miles away. Laban accuses Jacob of deceiving him and kidnapping his daughters. "You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren goodbye. I could really hurt you. But the God of your father appeared to me last night in a dream and told me to lay off." Well, chapter 31 continues, and Laban can't find his gods. Imagine that. Laban accuses Jacob of stealing his idols. Jacob defends himself, and then he says, "The one with whom you find your gods shall not live." He calls down the death penalty on the thief. He doesn't know that Rachel had taken them. So Laban makes a thorough search. Rachel is in her tent. She hides the figurines in her camel cushion, and she sits on them. And then she says, "Oh, I can't get up because the way of women is upon me," she tells her dad. Well, things come to an end there. Basically, Laban and Jacob make a covenant of peace. They set up pillars. They swear an oath, share a meal. Laban charges Jacob not to hurt his girls. Early the next day, he kisses his grandchildren and daughters, blesses them, and goes home. So Jacob is returning now to Canaan as patriarch of his clan, confident that God is with him. His trials at Uncle Laban's have not broken his spirit. He has acquired a growing awareness of his dependence on God. He has struggled, he has suffered, he has endured, and he has come out much the stronger and better for it. But his problems are not over. Esau is ahead. Chapter 32. On his way to Canaan, Jacob is met by 2 angels, I think probably for reassurance. And he says, "This is the camp of God." And he names the place Mahanaim, 2 camps, probably referring to God's camp and to his own camp. And in anticipation of confronting Esau, he sends a message by a servant to "My lord Esau, from your servant Jacob." The messengers return word that your brother is coming to meet you, quote unquote, with 400 men. Now, why would he need 400 men if not to kill Jacob? Well, our patriarch is greatly afraid and distressed. He divides his people and livestock into two groups, two camps, Mahanaim, hoping to save at least one if Esau attacks. And then in fearful dread, he pours out his heart in prayer. O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, the one who was saying to me, return unto thy land and unto thy kindred, and I will deal well with thee. I am not worthy of the least of all the steadfast love, the kindness, and all the faithfulness which thou hast shown to thy servant. Deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come smite me, the mother upon or the mother with the children. Jacob throws himself on God's mercy, but he wants to try things to meet the threat himself too. On his own, he tries to buy Esau's favor, sending his servants ahead with gifts of animals, 550 in separate droves, one after another, and Jacob stays back in camp. That night, I guess he can't sleep. He gets up, he moves his wives, handmaidens, children, and belongings across the ford of the Jabbok, a tributary of the Jordan. And there a man wrestles with Jacob till daybreak. This mysterious person is more than a mere mortal. We don't know for sure who he is, but the man cannot overpower Jacob. So he touches or strikes the hollow of Jacob's thigh near his generative parts, maybe a reminder of his progeny. And his hip is strained, put out of joint. Jacob, the heel grasper, again, doesn't loosen his grip. The visitor says, let me go, the day is breaking. Perhaps the man is an angel with a physical human body, or this divine being may be the creator himself, appearing as a creature, the heavenly one in earthly form. Jacob will go on to say, I have seen God. Now, that may mean a representative of God. Anyway, the stranger doesn't want Jacob to see his face, lest the patriarch die, to keep a protective separation, a distance from the one who is holy. And there's some scriptures there that you might check out. Jacob says, I will not let you go unless you bless me. He recognizes this more than human opponent, this mysterious adversary, as an ally. And so again, the blessing of the theme of blessing pervades Genesis, and blessings are often given when the future looks bleak. Jacob's situation seems precarious. So the stranger says, what is your name? And he said, Jacob, which means supplanter, heel catcher, AKA deceiver, trickster. It's like a confession. And the visitor, the divine being, says, your name shall no more be called Jacob, but Israel. For you have striven, you have struggled, you've contended, you have fought with God and with men and have prevailed. So Jacob receives a new name, I think indicative of a new character. Now, the meaning of the word Israel, the word itself, is not clear. If it can have a subject and a verb within it, and Jacob is a subject, then it could mean he strives with God, he struggles with God, he contends with or against God. However, if God is a subject, El, then it could mean something like God strives, God fights, God perseveres, God prevails. God is the one who rules. Well, Jacob has wrestled with God and man and prevailed. Jacob struggled with God as he struggled with Esau and Laban. To wrestle with God is to be direct and honest with God, to confront God, to hold on, and to make God truly one's own. To go through struggle and persevere is to gain confidence and strength for life in a hostile world. And I like these words attributed to Helen Keller. I thank God for my handicaps, for through them I have found myself, my work, and my God. Jacob calls the place Peniel, the face of God. I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved. And again, we need to remember here, he did not see God as God really is. Such glory would have been overwhelming, blinding, unbearable. Jacob did not literally see the creator of the universe in all his radiant splendor and glory, but he did encounter God who made his face to shine upon him. Yet this triumph is not without loss. He is permanently stricken. He now limps. The Lord has crippled him. The limp carries a lesson. One who limps is slower, mindful of his limits. He can't just do whatever he wants. He's more dependent. He sees his need for something or someone to lean on. He realizes his need for gifts and grace. And the meaning of this mark, this strike on him, is passed on to his posterity. Chapter 33, Jacob, who had stolen his brother's blessing 20 years before, approaches Esau with utter submission, utter deference. He has sent this huge gift, which could also be translated blessing, to find favor in your eyes, my Lord. And then he bows to the ground 7 times as Esau approaches. His brother is apparently overwhelmed. He runs to meet Jacob, embraces him, falls on his neck, and kisses him, and they both weep. And Jacob says to see Esau's face is to see the face of God. Esau accepts Jacob's gift under protest. But Jacob is still wary and suspicious, and he refuses Esau's offer to lead his household to Seir and to leave his men to escort them, help them along the way. Jacob says, I will join you in Seir, but he never does. Esau goes home, and Jacob camps at Succoth, just east of the Jordan. Then he crosses the Jordan and settles at the Canaanite city of Shechem. Chapter 34. Dinah, the young daughter of Leah, she's probably just 13, 14, very, very young girl, goes out to the city, maybe to make friends. And Shechem, the son of the ruling prince, Hamor, sees her, takes her, and violates her. Then his soul is drawn to Dinah, and he tells the king, take me this girl for a wife. Hamor, rather than reprimanding his son for the vile thing he did, goes along. Jacob's sons come in from the field, and they are outraged at Dinah's defilement. The word defilement means something sacred has been violated. The desecration of her maidenhood, her being as a woman, her sexual purity. It's a heinous act against the girl, against her family, against Israel, against God and his right ways. Anyway, Hamor offers a business deal to Jacob and his family, and Shechem steps in and without shame offers to buy Dinah as a wife. She is, after all, still in his house. And a question we could ask here is, well, what choices do the brothers have? Why should the most honored son of the king just give the girl back? Should the brothers just hand their sister over, intermarry with the Canaanites, and jeopardize the covenant with God? If they try a rescue, how can they overcome the men of the city? Or if they get away, how can they escape almost certain retaliation? Well, they come up with a plan. Because Shechem has defiled their sister, they answer deceitfully with guile. They will agree, provided the men of Shechem, in order to become one people with them, accept circumcision. Well, Hamor and Shechem readily agree and quickly persuade the men of the city. Let us take their daughters and give them our daughters. And notice how that's phrased. Let us take whoever we want and give whoever we like as daughters. Their livestock, their property, all their animals will be ours. Shechem, the Shechemite men are circumcised. On the third day, the men are in pain. Simeon and Levi, Dinah's full brothers, attack the city. They kill every male, including the king and his son, take their sister, and leave. The sons of Jacob plunder the city, flocks and herds, beasts of burden, their wealth, children, wives, everything. And Jacob rebukes the boys. You have brought trouble on me, disaster, ruin. If the inhabitants of the land attack, I and my household will be destroyed. Notice there is no concern for the violation of his daughter or intermarriage with the Canaanites. And Simeon and Levi answer, should he treat our sister like a prostitute, as a harlot? So the brothers claim they are justified in avenging their sister's honor. Shechem has treated Dinah shamefully. The ruling prince, his son, and the entire community want to profit from the maiden's abuse. And so again, the question is, can the plunder and pillage of the city, the seizing of the women and children, can that be justified? How corrupt are the citizens of Shechem? Does the judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah or the destruction of the Midianites commanded by God in Numbers, can that have any bearing on this? To their credit, the brothers are willing to fight and die to defend and rescue their sister. And the word harlot, does that imply that Jacob's family, in doing nothing or going along with the deal, is also guilty of treating Dinah as a prostitute? Nevertheless, in his final words, Jacob will condemn the violence of Simeon and Levi in chapter 49. And eventually, the tribes of Simeon and Levi will be scattered. And Brueggemann notes the exacting description, the detailed description of the plunder indicates that the retaliation is completely disproportionate to the offense. And Cass says, we see the terrible dilemmas of settling in a land amid people who do not fear God. Well, chapter 35, God commands Jacob to arise, to leave that place, to go up to Bethel, the house of God. The family is to put away the foreign gods among them, to change their garments, and to purify themselves. In other words, a complete change, a complete turn from idolatry to the Lord. The fear of God falls on the surrounding cities as the family journeys to Bethel. They do not pursue the sons of Jacob. God blesses Jacob there, renews his covenant, his blessings, and again renames him Israel. God rules, God who will rule. And so, as Brueggemann notes, a new person is formed here. A new community is convened. It is called forth in the land as an alternative to the Canaanite culture in which it is placed. Or as Charlie reminded us a couple of weeks ago, we are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, distinct, separate, dedicated, God's own people. Chapter 35 continues. The family heads towards Isaac's home in Hebron, and Rachel goes into hard labor. She dies, giving birth to Benjamin, and she is buried on the way to Ephrath, or Bethlehem. Jacob sets up a marker, a memorial stone at her grave. And then this one sentence in chapter 35, verse 22, Reuben, the firstborn, lays with Jacob's concubine, which is a direct affront to Jacob as father. It's an assault on his authority, his position, his paternity. And Reuben will forfeit his birthright. We have a listing of a complete listing of the 12 sons of Jacob. And then as the chapter concludes, Jacob goes to his father at Mamre or Hebron, and Isaac dies at the age of 180. Esau and Jacob, his sons, bury him. Chapter 36, the descendants of Esau. They're not forgotten. Esau's 3 wives bear 5 sons. Esau has had to move his household away from Jacob in Canaan to the hill country of Seir, which is southeast of the Dead Sea. From Esau's sons will come 14 chiefs or tribal leaders who will dominate the indigenous chiefs and the kings there in Edom. Chapter 36 concludes by again listing the leaders, the chiefs in Esau's lineage who will rule the region. So God has not forgotten Esau. Yet, missing here is any mention of unity or a unified way of life which comes through the right ways and covenant of God that was begun with Father Abraham. So in conclusion, in Genesis, God's people are blessed, often in spite of their envy, their duplicity, and pride. God's promises endure in spite of our failure. He is faithful even when we are not. While God may bless us in spite of ourselves, we still are called to follow the path of life, the life of faith, the true way of God in the new covenant of his Son. May we press on toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus.